Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea Anderson, and we're here with Team thisABILITY. They did the 10-hour chill. It was put on by Adventure Addicts, and it was a couple of weeks ago. And it's February, so it was a cold race, as it suggests. And Amanda and Chip, they've raced together before, and Michael and Rich are new to the team. And Chip was the team captain, and Chip, why don't you tell us basically what were your goals and how'd that play out?
Well, I have to go all the way back a bunch of years when Rich with Choice Insurance Company got me involved in event racing. I literally was like, I'm just some athletic dude that does stuff. And then Rich is like, hey, I want to do this race. It's like 24 hours. Like, whoa, that sounds like a long time. Like, what about like do the 12-hour? And he's like, no, go big or go home. So we signed up, and I had no idea how to use a compass. It points north. Other than that, we got our butts kicked, but I came away from that race loving it. So I, of course, picked it up and started racing as much as possible. Rich did the more adult thing, which is scale his company and everything, and grew it to the point where he sold it. And now he's seen me do all these expeditions, and I think we were chatting, and he was like, "Man, I'd love to do one of these." And I'm like, "I got the race for you. You introduced me to event racing. I'm going to introduce you to the finish line of an expedition." And so we signed up for the C2C down in Florida, which is happening this February. So really, this race was pretty much a shakedown for Michael and Rich to do a live dress rehearsal of what we're going to do in Florida for 72 hours. Now, Amanda, it was Andrew, you weren't available. So we were like, well, we've got to be a 3-person co-ed. And we had raced with Amanda before in Paraguay and had a really, really good time. And so I was like, hey, Amanda. And so she agreed to come with us. And we had our little 4-person team and had a total blast.
So your goal was to have some preparation for future races. What about during the race? Did you plan to clear? Did you hope to clear? Were you just trying to maintain? What about how you wanted to place?
The primary goal, of course, was, just because it was a new team. Michael was on nav. I don't think I've ever been in a race where I wasn't the nav other than with Michelle and Adventure Addicts. And so, I had no idea what his real capability was going to be under pressure, although he did really well. This was Rich's first race since the Epic in like 2016 or 17, whenever I first started. So it was like, I know we're not going to go hard and fast because this is his first race. Like, you got to get the gear sorted out and all that. Pretty much, my goals, at least, I think the team would probably agree. Let's just do the best we can. Let's have a lot of fun. Let's learn a lot, but let's go slow enough to where we can mostly sort gear and figure stuff out and not kill any one teammate, and survive the cold, because it was like it's like 15 degrees when we got started. So it's also a matter of really just making sure nobody gets hurt.
So to me, that sounds like what our goal always is. I kind of wanted to hear you say that. And we try to focus on what we can do instead of what we can't do. That's part of our team name, because we support people with disabilities, and focusing on the positive and the things you can do is a sure way to success. So I think we've all, on this call have learned that. And she's got a lot of race experience, a lot of expeditions under her belt, and just a lot of life experience too. So Amanda, how did you think the team gelled, and what roles did everybody have? Did it change, or just what was your take on how the team did?
Yeah, I think we achieved all our goals. I went into it really hoping that Michael would have a great time in nav, and that it's always an opportunity to be confidence building or confidence shattering with new teammates and a new person on nav. So it can either like make or break whether somebody ever wants to be a nav again, based on like how they do, how the rest of the team treats them if they make a mistake. So 10 hours is relatively short if for those of us who are used to expedition racing all the time. So the like risk of getting like really, really lost, with Chip there to like quickly back up on the maps and everything with 2 sets of maps. There really is no risk to letting somebody who is kind of inexperienced on nav or like hasn't done it in a race a whole lot jump in and lead. So I was really excited to watch Michael do that, and he crushed it. And then knowing that the guys, I mean, Rich, Chip, and Michael, like y'all are headed down, well, and Andrea too, you guys are all headed to C2C. So I'm always stoked when new people want to get into an expedition too. So any way that I could be on the team to be a resource to the guys before they go down, I wanted to be there and do that. And hopefully that's how it worked out.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, Amanda. I appreciate you being on the team. I know they did too.
The fun thing with Amanda, this was her shortest race ever.
Yeah.
She's like, oh no, I only do 4 and 5, 6, 7 day races, you know.
That was kind of fun, like learning, like, can I run fast? I don't know.
Did it feel a lot faster, or how did it feel?
Chip and I were talking, I almost felt insecure the night before, like looking at my bag and like my lack of food comparatively, and was like, well, I don't, what do I do? I have so much time and I have so few things. Like, what do I do with all my, not all my gear? I don't know. It was very, I kept feeling nervous, like I was forgetting something, but yeah, so that was the only thing that felt kind of funny.
Yeah, I bet. I can imagine that. So Michael, you're new to the team. You did the primary navigation, and the race was at the Holiday Lake State Park in Virginia, and the Appomattox State Forest. What did you think of the nav and the terrain? Was there anything really unique about it, or maybe anything about the map or the scale? What did you think about that part of it?
There's a lot of learning lessons. I mean, I agree with Chip, like in terms of the goals. The first one was not to lose any body parts, make sure nothing turned black. Was totally worried about getting wet, right? And then being affected by the cold. But what I remember is like never being cold. Like we just moved the whole time. So it really wasn't much of an issue. I thought the gear preparation was great. But in terms of navigation, it's really nice when it's wintertime and all the leaves are off the trees and you can, see where you're going from about 500 feet out or more. I also didn't feel much pressure just because you guys were such great teammates. Anytime there's a question I could ask, you guys are very confident. It's like, old hat, and Chip's an excellent navigator too. And so that just was fun. It just was a fun experience for me, for sure.
Well, that's super great. I said, you're a new racer. That's not exactly true. This wasn't even your longest race, was it? What have you done adventure racing up to this point?
Just 12-hour races.
Okay.
Yeah, 12 hours.
So it was your shortest race also, or not?
Oh, let me think. I think I started with a 6-hour race.
Okay. So as far as the length goes, were you pretty comfortable with that length? And do you feel it was a good preparation for the C2C?
I guess I'll tell you after the C2C if I survive. Yeah.
Good point.
I mean, I think there are different mentalities. I think in these 10, 12-hour races, there's very little time. Like, I felt like we stayed way too long in our transition area for a 10-hour race. And if we really wanted to be competitive, we needed to cut that down by almost 20 minutes. Because that's a lot of time that we spent that we could have been moving on our bikes. Probably could have picked up another checkpoint at least.
Well, you're skipping ahead to my question of what you do differently.
I mean, the point is in C2C, right? Like 20 more minutes in a checkpoint's not as crucial as in a 10-hour race.
Well, and I guess you guys are kind of lucky there was just one transition point. So there was a trek section and a bike section, and you could choose to do either one of those first. And there were clusters of wild card points that you could get in either leg. So we can talk about that in a minute. But Rich, seeing as you haven't raced in quite a while, but this is not your longest race either, but it might have been your coldest race. I don't know. What did you think about the temps, and how was the team? Were you all prepared for that? How did that feel to you?
Well, Chip said that you pack for your fears and you gear up for your fears. And apparently I was really afraid of being cold. So I started off with a baklava on my head, and that lasted like 15 minutes and I was sweating, bullets. So like Michael said, we were moving the whole time. So it was really primarily not a rational fear. It did get me a little bit at the end when the sun was setting and, we were barreling down the hill towards the finish line, and my gloves were not sufficient. So my extremities were getting pretty cold near the end, but with the exception of the near end of the race, really it was a non-factor.
I think that's always surprising for people to hear, that you can be relatively comfortable in 30-degree temps, and you started at 15 degrees, and here you're saying you're already taking layers off. And yeah, I can't stand my baklava. Like it's just too hot. Like you said, seconds after you put it on. Of course, I've never raced in some of the extreme temperatures that Amanda has.
But let's be sure we point out the difference. Like Chip has just 2 small layers on his top. I have a puffy on, okay, and I'm just comfortable. Chip has almost shorts on. We're going. I'm fine. No way. I had this awesome pair of pants. I wrote down who makes them. It's Northbound Gear, has like a fleece lining to it. It's warm. I liked it. It was great.
Wow. Well, when we post this, we'll have to post a link to those. Maybe I need some of those, because I can't stay as warm as Chip does. Chip, what about that? Why don't you tell the world what you usually wear on a daily basis and your rules for yourself for temperature?
Yeah.
Chip isn't a t-shirt. These are not the rules. These are just Chip rules.
They're Chip's rules for his life specifically.
Well, so to be honest, okay, so this one is, I just like being comfortable, and I just think you're pretty much a badass if you get to wear board shorts and t-shirt every single day. Like, I figure if you're wearing a suit and tie, you work for somebody, and I'm self-employed, so I'm like, I just want to wear board shorts and flip-flops and preferably no shoes. What really did it for me is I watched the Wim Hof documentary. I think they call him the Iceman. You can find it on YouTube. I think it's WHMHOF. If I remember, we'll put it in the comments. If you watch the documentary, what this guy has figured out to do is to hack the body into being comfortable at very low temperatures. So, for example, he can pack himself in ice for like 2 hours, and he can just, with his brain, change his metabolism to heat his body up so he doesn't die. And I was just fascinated with that. And it's not just him. He'll actually take people, he'll put them through a course, and then they actually climb Kilimanjaro with no shirt on, like board shorts and shoes and no shirt to the top of Kilimanjaro, which is like the highest mountain in Africa, in the wind and the cold. And people survive this. So you also heard people that go swimming in ice water. They take ice baths. So either way, I just basically pretty much told myself I'm not going to wear thermal gear unless it gets below 40 degrees day to day. So, you leave the house, you get to the car, you go to the car, go to the office, go to the grocery store. You won't see me wearing a jacket. Unless it's maybe raining or something, but basically day to day, I don't allow myself to wear thermal. And then when you get into a race and you put on a merino wool thing, you're like, holy crap, I'm on fire.
Hey, Chip, long sleeves don't qualify as a thermal. That's actually regular wear.
Yeah, like a performance shirt, long sleeves, I don't consider thermal, but like a wool shirt or a jacket, that's where I'm like, if I'm putting on a jacket at 60 degrees, I kind of think badly of myself. Think it's a slippery slope.
So suffice to say, it's each to his own a little bit. You have to try out your gear and find out what works for you, and what works for Chip is not going to work for Rich or Michael for that matter, or me. Probably not many people in the whole world. Anyway, so as far as managing your energy throughout the day, what did you take to eat, and did it fuel you through the day? And Amanda, why don't you start with that?
Yeah, so I don't know who turned me on to this, or maybe I just saw somebody do it a couple years ago, but those little baby food pouches where you can get like 100 to 110 calories, I love those. I have a hard time eating like on the go as I'm moving and walking, remembering to like actually stop and eat solid food. So for me, those are super, super easy. Sometimes gel, sometimes bars, but I think for this race, we ate a lot of pizza actually in the beginning of the day for breakfast. And And it was only 10 hours, so we really didn't need to do anything too crazy in terms of fueling. But normally when I race, I like to use Martin because I like those drink powders. I like the pectin in it because it gives a little bit of consistency. So for me, it's easier to like take it and get more calories than some of the other powders.
What did you say it was called?
Martin, it's
Oh,
Marten. Yeah. I usually use like the 320 calorie packs. And I like it just like I said, because kind of the gel, the pectin, really helps with my stomach while I'm out there. And it also has a lot of the electrolytes and other salts and nourishment that you need for your like fuel replacement. But yeah, I think for this race, it was actually logistically like a pretty straightforward eating. But you know, my favorite part of the race actually was when Rich pulled out the eggs and like a charcuterie baggie. I think this is like twice now in a thisABILITY race that I've like had fine charcuterie in the middle of a race that somebody pulled out of the bag or we stopped for. So that was a highlight for me.
So Rich said he must be afraid that he was going to freeze. But maybe he was afraid he was going to starve as well. I don't know, Rich, how did those eggs treat you? And did you have did any of you have leftover food or anything you wished you hadn't taken with you because it was just too much stuff?
I mean, I'm still trying to figure out the food thing. I wasn't too worried about the 10-hour race just because it's 10 hours. I mean, it's twice as long as a marathon. You don't pack food on a marathon, except maybe a gel pack or two along the way. But so I wasn't too worried about that. I'm still trying to fine tune the meal thing. When I took Racing Academy in 2006, one of the pieces of advice was pack stuff that you enjoy, that you'll actually consume, so that you're actually getting the calories. So the charcuterie tray was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't really a tray, but the meat and cheese and some protein. So I think that on the C2C, I'm definitely gonna be bringing more carbs. That was definitely a good recommendation that everybody had. But no, I didn't really end up with any extra food. Not much to speak of in the end. I found myself consuming more calories than I thought I would in a 10-hour race, which I thought would be pretty breezy. But Michael had it down to a science for the number of calories per hour, and very scientific.
Did that work for you, Michael? What did you take to eat? And what fear were you packing?
What was I packing?
Was there any fear that you were packing? Like you pack your fears?
Oh, pack your fears.
But
Well,
tell us about the food first.
sure. Yeah. Well, my fear of losing a finger was real. Like I wanted all my fingers when the race was over. But I wanted to get at least 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates over an hour, and electrolyte replenishment and drinking lots of water. And I love the cold pizza like that. When I came back to the transition area and there was cold pizza there, I think it just went down nice. I think for the C2C, I'm just going to get 2 large pizzas and just break them up and then stick them in my short. I mean, that was great. Real food tastes good,
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on the real food during racing.
Yeah.
And since we've been cutting a lot of carbs lately, I am really excited about sugary stuff.
Yeah. Well, that said, I mean, at the C2C, I think it's important after you've been going for more than 3 to 6 hours, you've got to put some protein and fat into your diet as well. You can't just live off carbs. The more complex fats are going to help give you energy that you need when you're going constantly 24, 48, 72 hours. And for some people, they don't need to eat very often. I find it's just helpful to eat every 30 minutes, just a bit, so that it's kind of not such a bolus at one time.
So knowing that you're an ear, nose, and throat doctor, I feel like you have a different perspective from, as it applies to nutrition than we usually see. And you seem like you're pretty exacting. Do you think that is why? I mean, because your background as a doctor that
No, I don't. I don't spend any time in my practice working on dietary stuff. I mean, I've had some fun conversations with Chip and his approach to it. And I've had some friends who are dietitians who have given me their advice, but I've just read about it and just tried to find out what works for me. The only thing I can't eat is those like honey bombs. those like little packets that are just pure sugar, my stomach just does not tolerate that.
Good to know. All right. So it was, we're just saying it was just a 10-hour race, which is, actually quite a feat. I'm sure it had some difficult moments, but I always learn something in a race, no matter what the length is, either about myself or about what I want to do differently next time. So Chip, let's hear from you. What did you learn, and what do you want to do differently in your next race?
Transitions are the devil, like Michael said, like especially I looking back on it, yes, the pizza was amazing. We probably should have grabbed it and gone, right? We could have been eating while we're biking slow or something like that. So usually it's like, don't do stuff in transition, just repack and go, and then do stuff while you're moving. But again, I was looking at it like, we're not going for the podium. If the team wants to hang out a little bit, I'm cool with that. But either way, it's like towards the end, we were very competitive and we wanted to get these extra checkpoints. We come screaming in with only 9 minutes on the clock or something. So it was no longer leisurely. For me, honestly, and Michael attended one of the clinics that Mark Montague and I put on, and so that's where we kind of hit it off, and we've done a lot of training, whether it's just verbal or going out in the wilderness and doing stuff. And I've been talking to Rich a lot about it, because I got to get him from going, I know very little to I know enough to get to an expedition and not die. So we've done a lot of chatting, and I know Amanda had tons of experience in doing expeditions, and she's raced with us before in Paraguay for 7 days in the World Championship. So she knows how I operate. I knew she'd show up ready to go. I was just really like, I hate to say this, I didn't learn a lot because things went as planned. It's like we very much executed our plan very, very well, and there really wasn't too many problems that were unforeseen. So that's what I learned. It's like planning, whatever they say a plan is useless after the race starts or whatever, but failure to plan is going to be a catastrophe. So yeah, things didn't go exactly perfect the way we wanted, but we had done enough planning. Everything went, we all had a really good time, and I was very proud of our results.
So I'm going to have to call you out. I heard a little something.
I did forget my helmet.
A helmet that didn't make it to the start line. What about that? Maybe someone else should explain that story. Who wants to
teamwork?
tell the world about
it was
that?
a no factor. No factor. We're not talking about it, Andrea. It was a no factor.
The helmet was there before the race started. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
No factor. Did not slow us down.
We adapted and overcame. Worked together as a team also.
So did it or did it not mean that someone had to take an extra trip back to the hotel to get some mandatory equipment?
Yes. So actually, here's the learning lesson.
How are you going to manage that for the next race, Chip?
I will neither confirm nor deny that accusation.
Okay. So I'll just come clean. We want to be authentic here, and this is not a proud moment of mine, but my big van that I camp out of, it's like my house, it's my office, and it ended up in the shop, and the entire engine had to be pulled apart to do the timing belt. So I took my little tiny baby van out there. And I had it full of equipment, whether it's racing equipment. I had AEDs I'm delivering to my divisions and outside the company. And it was like 12 degrees and I was scared to sleep outside, not getting good sleep. So I ended up getting a hotel for the first time ever before an adventure race, like ever. Even when I did my first race with Rich, I had a cargo van that I could sleep out of. Like so I felt like a total wuss getting a hotel. What happened is, this is the learning, is when you throw yourself off of your normal schedule, which my schedule is everything is in my van. If I can just get the van to the race start, I know I have everything. I had taken stuff out, taken it up to the hotel to sort gear. So it wasn't in my van. It's where it should have been. And so that's how I made that error. So so it goes to, I guess the learning from that is, anybody that has a system, if you change the system, realize that you're not in your routine and you're likely to forget something, which is what happened to me. So thank you for teammates running back and getting my bike helmet.
All right, your turn, Amanda. Did you learn anything, or did you have any highlights from the race?
One of the things that was kind of different for me is that it's not often that I find myself like one of the more experienced people on the team. So being able to kind of step back and watch and kind of point out, like, how can you visualize like route finding like through all these briars. We were some bushwhacking fools on this course, which is like, some races all you do is bushwhack and like pace count into different checkpoints, but not that many. So really it was kind of a fun course that you got to like really do whatever kind of route finding and bushwhacking you wanted on this one. And also because most of the terrain was really easy to see for a long distance because of all the vegetation being down, that you could help people visualize like what you're seeing 2D on the map, 3D, like these very, very slight changes in the terrain, or like how to push through different rhododendron and briars. I don't know, different things from experience, just time in the woods. I don't often find myself in the position where I'm a more experienced person on the team. Usually I'm just absorbing and taking in from all of my teammates. So for me, that was kind of fun and different to actually be able to feel like I could help somebody else who's moving like forward in what they want to do for racing. And hopefully it was a little useful.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. And is there anything you do differently for your next race? And what is your next race?
Endless Mountains in June. Yep. So I'll do that with Luis, and then some other disability teammates. So that'll be kind of fun. Yeah. I will say one of the biggest learning points, this is kind of another long-winded thing, but if anybody's ever had like frostbite or other cold weather exposure injuries, that it can be a really hard recovery because a lot of those nerves are really damaged. And so if they do come back, lucky, but it can take years for some of the feeling. I know I had a really bad injury and it took probably 2 or 3 years before I could feel all my fingers again. And so I was really, really worried. And I mean, some days if it's like rainy and cold, even like 50 degrees, I'm always wearing gloves because my hands are just really cold. So I was nervous about being exposed for a long period of time. So I, over the years, have been trying different things for gloves to make sure that I don't have that happen again. And then 2, how do you prevent it if you get wet, blah, blah, blah. And so I was so happy that the system that I thought would work and that I'd like tested over and over actually did work when it came down to being like 15 degrees and outside for the whole day. And there's so many different things that work for different people, but for me the system that worked was like a technical layer thin liner glove, and then like a snow mitt. I literally wore those snow mitts over top of my liner gloves the entire trek. They looked ridiculous having the little like crab claws on, but I was so toasty and my hands were good to go the whole day. And then when we switched to the bike, I had a different like protective layer glove to keep the wind and also help insulate over top of that liner glove. And so for me, that was like, yes, a major cold weather success. And I was like, I gotta write this one down and share it with the world. So
that's great. Yeah, I think layering must be key, even with the hands. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, and it can be so hard if everything is getting wet. So we got really, really lucky that it was, crisp and dry the entire time. And we were able, anywhere there was water, we were able to like get over it or, choose a route to go around it. But yeah, that could have made this trip really, really different.
Yeah,
totally. See different,
Yeah. So Michael, what did you learn during this race and what do you want to do differently next time?
Well, from an orienteering standpoint, I learned you have to cut the maps and tape them together. I have to do that. Like, I thought I could just transition back and forth equally because I knew where they went together, but it's so much better for me to line the maps up. And then I need to figure out a better way on my map board to orient the map so I'm seeing a larger area at one time. The other mistake I made is I made the assumption on navigation that there were points that I would get on the bike. And I really didn't think about how close I was in the trekking navigation to those points, and that on a time basis for the amount of time that I had to get those points, that it probably would have been more efficient for us to swing up and grab some more points that I had just written off for the bicycling portion.
Yeah, I think that's a really difficult thing for teams like ours because we are usually needing to pick and choose from the points. Like we don't ever assume that we're going to get all of the points where, some of the leaders just assume they're going to get them all. And we have to at some point say, well, which is the most efficient way to get the most points instead of, which is a really different question than how do you get all of the points? So,
Right.
and route finding is really the key to that, the strategy for how you take. So yeah, and that's a big job. So Richard, what about you? What did you learn?
Well, I mean,
Really next time.
yeah, learning was my goal for this race, was to learn and be more prepared for C2C and not slow the team down too much. Like, that was my goal. So I was the inadvertent pace setter. I've got to live with that. That's okay. But you know, at the end of the day, you know, Michael did an amazing job on nav. I mean, we honed in on almost every point right out of the gate when we were getting in the vicinity. There was a couple that we hunted for, like an Easter egg, but not long and not many. Like, we really nailed the nav, and so that was really fantastic. I think that for me, it's getting the gear right, and Chip said it many times, and you know, not trying out new gear in a race and getting it all down. So that the gloves were a little bit of a fail point. And then I had a second fail point, which was accidental, but I had left my shoes that were well broken in and well worn at home. And I had bought a second pair in case my shoes got wet, that I did not plan on using, that I planned on having them in the transition area so that if I needed them, I had them, but they weren't broken in, never worn once. And I didn't tell Chip after the end of the race that I wore them the whole race, because and it turned out to work out just fine. But it could have been a major problem. So, you know, just getting the gear right and you know, before the race.
Awesome.
And peel your eggs before the race. Yeah, it literally has a half dozen eggs in the carton, hard boiled, non-peeled. It's like, we're sitting here peeling eggs. Okay, we can do this.
It's the perfect packaging. It comes with its own packaging.
What were you going to
I
say,
learned
Michael?
you could eat charcuterie with winter mitts. You should see how she kind of attacked them with those winter mitts.
I can picture it. Yeah, I know, you know, we do a lot of videotaping, and I always wish that there was this or that I had caught that I didn't. And we did see the peeling of the egg, but I don't know that we saw the eating of the charcuterie board with mittens on. Well,
that board gets really heavy after a 10-hour race, though, too. So maybe charcuterie on board.
Well, thanks for telling me about the race. I was going to pull up the maps and maybe even talk about a few specific points, but your nav was so good. There was nothing really to ask you about. It did look like you had a little bit of a rocky start, but I usually feel like it takes a few points to get yourself in the map and get yourself dialed in. And it seemed like once you got dialed in, you guys were spot on. So there was nothing really to ask you about.
I will say we were like, there was a trail that I was looking for that wasn't there. So we went about 50 feet the wrong direction. And I heard you were already giving us grief about it in live time. So I was like, all right, okay, now I'm nervous. She's like watching me and just make 50 feet difference. Oh my God.
Well, you know, I was worried. I just wanted to see, you know, what's going to happen here.
I watched our race afterwards in live time, and I just kept saying, why are we still at the transition area? Like, people are zooming in and out of there, and our dot's just like stuck there. That was the biggest thing.
So that is not a unique problem for this race, maybe not even for this team, but this team doesn't seem to have that dialed in quite yet. It might be one of our goals for this entire year to get better at transition areas. And in fact, we'd already talked with Caitlin, who will be racing in Croatia with us, that she's going to be our TA boss. So we're going to have a specific teammate just for the purpose of bossing people around at the TA. So like setting a time and kind of barking orders if they need to be barked. So I don't know why it's so hard. Well, I do kind of, because you feel like it's a time to rest and it feels good and all of that stuff. But I think you guys did great. Chip, why don't you close and remind me how well you did? How were the results? And
Actually,
what do you think?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I remember being really impressed. Most of the teams above us should have beat us. Like there's better teams. They're faster. and not many teams that should not have beat us. So we ended up plus or minus, probably just minus 1 or 2 from where, let's say, Andrea, if it was just you and I out there doing it with Caitlin or whatever, or Amanda, just the typical teammates that know what they're doing. I think we only were 1 or 2 back where we would have been. So it's it could have been a lot worse. And so but the team performed really well. Yeah, we ate too much pizza in transition, but so
yeah, but huge testament to Michael and Rich though, like come right out strong like that.
Absolutely.
Seriously, I thought you did as well as any of our teams have ever done. You landed definitely in the top half and probably closer to the top quarter. I don't have the results in front of me anymore either. And usually it doesn't even matter that much to us. So I think that's, a testament to Rich and Michael, what they brought to the team, being, the first race that you all have done together. You did a great job. So thanks for talking with me about it, and see you later.
Well, wait, before we end, we got to give props to Adventure Addicts. Once again, they pulled off an amazing race. Michelle and Liz and that entire team, from the information being sent out prior to the race to checking in and getting the gear sorted in the directions, welcoming us there, making sure we're all safe, getting the race started. The checkpoints, nothing was off on the checkpoints. Everything was exactly where it should have been. The maps, Latanzi did the maps. Maps were great. And then, of course, the after party, there was plenty of food, and they even had gluten-free options, which I ate like a bowl of pasta the size of my head, because for that one day I was allowed to eat carbs. And the awards and everything went just really well. So some races go wrong and things aren't there. This was one of those races. I don't know if anything bad happened, but we didn't notice it because the volunteers in the race, all of them just did a phenomenal job.
Super cool.
While we're giving shout outs, Adventure Enablers did the tracking. So for a 10-hour race, it's really pretty cool that we got to be tracking it at home. So that was really cool to see. We also had quite a number of other Team thisABILITY members from past races racing this race. I think there was something like 7 other people that were racing on other teams. And I think that's always surprising for people new to the sport to see that, people shuffle around quite a bit. And a lot of times it's because of availability or what's happened in your life. If you're recovering from something, or, you're trying to go a little faster, like everybody's kind of just shuffling around, and a lot of us get along really well. So I always love to see that, and love to see how all of our teammates, past and present and future, have done. So I bet that was really cool to see everybody. I hated to miss it.
Very cool.
Amanda mentioned it, but there's going to be a funny thing that's going to happen during Endless Mountains. The Endless, I wasn't planning on doing Endless because I already had 5 expeditions planned, and Andrea, you weren't able to do it. So I was like, we're just going to, I just can't do it. I want to do it, but I can't. And then Michelle from Adventure Addicts, she was like, hey, Chip, I don't see you signed up. Can you do this race? And I was like, I can't turn down doing Endless Mountains, and none of my teammates are available. Because, I talked to Amanda, and everybody was like, we can't do Endless. So I was like, I'm not going to do it solo. And so I get asked to be on Adventure Addicts with Michelle and Paul and Brenda Carlson, which I've always wanted to race with Brenda. And I raced with Michelle and Paul before in Expedition Oregon. So I was like, okay, I'll just be on the Adventure Addicts team. No big deal. And then all magically, Amanda and Lewis and Jason, who we raced with at Endless last year, all of them were like, hey, we're going to go set up a team called thisABILITY Haiku or something. I'm like, wait a second, I'm fighting my own team in this race. This is not okay. But whatever, it's going to be entertaining. So if anybody wonders why Chip's not on thisABILITY this year at Endless, it's because of this big debacle of we didn't coordinate our team very well.
It was a conspiracy, actually.
Yeah, they're like, let's trick them. Either way, I hope they do very well and get,
And I'm not sure fight is exactly the right term.
We'll
I doubt you'll be fighting.
Yeah.
Because Team thisABILITY is going to smoke you guys, Chip.
Probably. I have no idea how this is going to go. I even told Michelle, like, what do you want me to do? Like, am I Nav? Am I Sherpa? Just you tell me. I'm going to sit back and let you be team captain. So.
Well, I'm going to follow all y'all, and I'm going to be jealous. I'll have a little bit of FOMO, but
hopefully you're doing live commentary again.
I don't know. We'll see. It ate me up last time that you did Endless without me. I was just watching the dots like 24/7 for 5 days. Like, how can I still be sitting at a computer? Anyway. All right. Well, I think that is everything, right? I think
That's
we
it.
can wind it up.
Next up is C2C. Follow our dot. We're going to be there.
See.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.